Hey guys, what's up? Misha from GGD here, and today I'm going to be answering your questions. That's right, we asked you what your questions were on the GGD forum on Facebook, so join that if you haven't already. And we picked out some of our favorite questions, and now I'm going to answer them. So, without further ado, let's jump right in.
This is Misha's FAQ.
Jack Penders says, I'd love a more in-depth description of the entire GGD process. Stuff like how you guys decide what kit, cymbals, room to use, the whole sampling process, if it's generally when periphery are recording an album, or if the GGD sessions are independent from album recordings. Pretty much any other insight to the process. Well, Jack, that's a great question. There's a lot of variables there. I mean, first off, we kind of think about what kind of kit we want to do. And generally, when it comes to picking the kit pieces and the general concept, Nolly's the one who'll sort of put all that stuff together. You'll start thinking about the room, the kit pieces, any mics or equipment that he thinks might be essential for that. We also all have input, but that's kind of Nolly's specialty. He really is the sort of golden engineer of the project, and we really trust his ears and his insight. So that will determine a large part of what we do and what we choose, and we will strategize as to like what the kit should actually be, what kind of vibe it should be. Now, of course, when we're doing periphery albums, generally what we've been doing is we have, actually Matt just kind of works really quickly and we always sort of over budget on time just in case. But generally speaking, we've just had extra time to work with. And oftentimes it's good to have like samples. It's good to capture samples of the session anyways, in case you need to replace or reinforce or whatever. It's just good to have. So it's almost like just taking some extra samples at the end as well. And you know, if there's an extra day or two, then yeah, then they can sample the, you know, it's all set up, it's all dialed in. So it's actually perfect, perfect opportunities to just capture it. And it's interesting because the P4 kit was really just with extra time at the studio. We thought maybe that time could be used to sample, but we also didn't know how quickly the recording process would go. But that ended up being one of my favorite kits that we've ever put together. And it was almost just done with a bit of extra time. But they did, you know, that was Nolly and Matt doing that one. For a lot of the kits I've been involved, but that one, it was just those two that were needed. So we just kind of let them run with it, and it became an amazing kit. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some insight into the process. Really, what you have to remember is that's the part that really sort of Nolly just oversees entirely, because it's his insight and his wisdom into all the parts and how everything will work together that I feel really gives us our unique sound to a large degree. And that's the sort of basis of the GGD sound, as it probably should be given the name, right? Andre Silvestre, and I apologize if I'm butchering the names in advance, sorry. Why are all the default velocities maxed, given that 90% of the cases they need to be lowered in order to sound more natural? Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of people tend to program and tend to think 127 is the right number, you know, max velocity. I personally like to bring them down, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of a taste thing. I think some of and actually to clarify, I believe he's talking about the groove packs, because, you know, if you're talking about actually programming, you can just dial it in like in Cubase. If I were to just create a track here, you can actually see your default level right here, like it's 112 right here. So that means that any note I do will just default to 112. And that's generally where I would keep it, like 110-ish. Every kit's a little different. But yeah, like, I think when it comes to the MIDI packs, then that's really just down to your taste. And one thing I like to do is just sort of let them play and adjust the volumes, which again, you can do in Cubase fairly easily. Like, for example, if we were to just, I don't know, pick a random groove. Right, that works. In Cubase, what you can do is you could select all, and then you can do Shift and Command, at least, oh no, sorry, was it? Yeah, Shift and Command on a Mac at least. Then you could just drag the MIDI up and down like that, right? So effectively, you could just listen You can also scale it that way. In fact, that's better because every time I do this, it is actually giving you the note, but can dial in the sweet spot. So there's no exact level that's right. And for certain styles, kits, mixes, 127 might be good. So that way you have all the relative levels set there. I hope that makes sense. Kyle Briot says, is GGD working on any more plugins besides drum libraries? Well, we already have. We have Smash and Grab. We have GGD Iszilla IR. And although I really can't say too much about what we're working on in particular, I think it's clear that we're not just doing drum libraries anymore. That's how we started. We are sort of expanding into other things that we're kind of passionate about or excited about. Both the cab sim and the compressor were just things that we kind of wanted for ourselves and things that we felt like we could do just right for what we wanted. So we will just continue to do that and work on things where we're like, you know what plugin I wish kind of existed? Wish this existed and that. And it just keeps everything sort of rooted in being a passion project first and foremost, if that makes sense. Kevin Levia says, is Iszilla Cabs and Mega Gent the same IRs from your initial collaboration with ML Sound Lab? So no. Those cabs, I don't know what Mega Gent is. I'm assuming that's Miko or ML Sound Lab. Iszilla Cabs is something completely fresh. Nolly spent a really long time. In fact, it was one of those things where I think he captured it probably at least once in its entirety, if not twice, before realizing he had a better way of doing it. And it was a lot. It was a lot of work. The whole point was capturing everything, but then making the interface as simple as possible, so that like people who are overwhelmed by it wouldn't find it overwhelming to use. Like, you don't want to have like 1,000 files you have to sort through. It's just better to be able to just click on it and have everything sort of work. But the back end's a lot of work, and I believe Nolly like reshot it a few times just because he kept getting it just better and better and better. And in my opinion, of course I'm a little bit biased, but in my opinion, and based off what I actually use, in short, the GGD Iszilla Cabs IR is definitely my favorite cab sim. That's what I use. I put it on everything. So yes, I am a little bit biased, but I think knowing the work that Nolly put into it and the attention to detail they put into it, it kind of makes sense. Garrett Sodrowski says, any plans to release a kit that specializes in electronic music? Perhaps an OKW kit with some 808s and that sort of thing. So that's really interesting. That's a really interesting question. I brought stuff up like that before. I think it would be great to do something like that. It's really just about time and strategy. Like, we're not just sort of doing things on a whim, and all these things take time. So we're actually planning out our year in maybe a year and a half in advance now with the products. And of course, nothing ever goes quite to plan. That's life. But it's good to at least have a strategy and maybe some contingencies planned as well. So that's something I'd love to tackle down the road. It's just a matter of when as opposed to if. But yeah, fingers crossed, right? Joe Baxter says, when is the inevitable GGD verb coming? Dialing in drum reverb is hard as... Let's just bleep that out. Dialing in drum reverb is hard for me. So we actually do have reverb. Here, let's just open this up real quick. Built into some of the kits, at least. Like the One Kit Wonder has reverb built into it. So does Invasion, I believe. So the One Kit Wonder kits have it. I believe P4 has it. Did Modern and Massive have it? I don't really use it. I use external reverb. But yeah, even that has it. And that, you know, you may prefer external reverb. You may not. This might be good enough. I think what's dialed in here is definitely serviceable. It's a little bit more controllable when it's outside the kit, in my opinion. And as a result, maybe that's a good call. Again, it's one of those things that I would love to do. It could actually be a cool passion project because I think everyone at GGD is very picky with their drum reverb, myself included. So that could be a cool project to work on. Again, more of a question of when and not if. Oh my god, I'm going to mess up this name and I'm so sorry. Askir Helgi Prestarsson? I am very sorry. Are you playing a One Kit Wonder version with a soft kit? Something that isn't tight and sharp, but softer and more open and would work in non-metal type stuff? Well, I'd argue that Modern Fusion especially has a lot of range. But yes, the idea of these one kit wonder kits is that they are kind of focused. They're focused towards a specific style and genre and setup. And yeah, it would definitely make sense to have a one kit wonder kit that's a little softer. Again, I can't say too much, but I think, if you just kind of read between the lines, it might make sense to do that down the road, right? Russell Barnett says, "Hey Misha, any plans on bass cabinet IR plugin like Iszilla?" Well, he's asking if we're doing a bass cabinet IR plugin like Iszilla cabs. So, we don't have any concrete plans yet, but that is the IRs are definitely something we're going to explore more and more. The truth is, we love the way that Iszilla came out, and it definitely sparked a bunch of other ideas for other guitar cabs, and bass cabs are a logical next step. So all these questions are great. You guys are actually thinking about this stuff along the same lines that we are. And it's really just a matter of time. When they say there's not enough hours in the day, well, there's not enough days in the year either. It's just all these things take time, and we want to do all these things, and we have to prioritize. But yes, personally, I would love to see that. I'd love to see it sooner than later. I would probably use it all the time, which is great. That's about as good a reason as any to put out a product. But there's no actual timeline for that yet. So Charles Bradley says, "What must-have plugins would you recommend for putting together a solo demo? Bare necessities, if you will." Okay, so that's a great question. And honestly, I would say most DAWs would have you covered. Yes, I use mostly third-party plugins, but the basics can be learned with the stuff that you have in your DAWs. Most DAWs, if not all of them, come with a pretty competitive suite of plugins. So even, using Cubase, like, look, even their channel strip has like gate compressor, EQ, saturation limiter, and you'd have the Steinberg version of pretty much all the plugins that I use at this point. Like, now that they include things like saturation, you're pretty well covered, and they're good quality. I personally prefer the third-party plugins, but those cost money. So I actually put together a video where I actually do a mix using just the stock Cubase plugins to show that you can get a good mix going with that. And what's great is that if you learn on that stuff, then when you get the third-party plugins, then you'll appreciate the difference, or maybe what it does better, or what it adds, and you'll better understand the concept behind using it, and sort of the range that you get from using different plugins. So if you're worried about, a budget setup or the bare necessity setup, I say just use what you have. You probably have everything that you need, and you might be surprised with the results that you can get just using what you've got. All right, and the last question goes to, and I apologize again, Mehdi Saeed Riaz. Hopefully that's close enough. And they ask, how do we go about using the Groove libraries when all the GGD libraries have weird mapping? Okay, so this is something that we've seen come up a few times. So I've actually got this open here. I'll explain to you how this works. Let's say you've got any of our kits, right? You'll see that there's different mapping here, right? GGD, General MIDI, Halpern, Invasion, because that's a pretty specific mapping. But whatever you choose, if you go to the Groove player, right, and then you just select a groove. Let's find a fun groove. That's a good groove. All right. So you just drag this, and now this is now mapped for this setting here. Let's say we go to Invasion, right? Now we just export this groove. And this sounds, well, like nothing. It's not even triggering anything. So you can see that it's exporting the groove relative to your mapping preset here. So that's the way that works. And then, if you're doing it like that, if you want to use this existing preset like this, then you can just put in the notes in the piano roll. So that is how that works. I think not everyone necessarily understands that. But that's okay. That's why I wanted to show it to you. So yeah, just pick the mapping you want to use, go to the Groove player, and it will adapt for that. And then you just drag that out, and your MIDI will be correct. So yeah, there you go. Anyways, thank you so much for all the questions, guys. It was actually a lot of fun to answer this. What do you say we do another one of these? Leave a comment below if you'd like me to do one more of these, or maybe some of the other guys to do one of these, or just comment with a question that you have. Maybe I'll answer in the comments. We'll see. Either way, thank you so much for your support, guys. We really appreciate it, and I'll catch you soon.